Subnautica 2 is one of the biggest Unreal Engine 5 games currently in development. It's an enormous handcrafted world with over 100,000 actors already placed in the map. It features full 4 co-op support, and it's entirely built in Unreal Engine 5.6, with the team already upgrading to 5.7. At Unreal Fest, the developers of Unknown Worlds gave a surprisingly honest presentation about everything that went right and everything that went wrong while building the game. Instead of showing off things like flashy features, they focus on the mistakes that they made and the systems that they had to completely throw away. The Unreal Engine 5 tools they wish they had trusted from the very beginning, and there are a lot of lessons that can apply to every Unreal Engine developer. So let's go ahead and take a deep dive into how UE5 games should be built with Subnautica 2. Also, if you want to see the full Unreal Fest talk, I'll leave a link to it in the description of this video. One thing that surprised me is how massive the project actually is. The playable world is already several kilometers across, but unlike many open world games, almost everything in this world is handcrafted, which means no runtime procedural world generation, no random terrain. Instead, they had level designers manually place nearly everything because exploration is one of the core parts of the Subnautica experience. Things like hidden caves, story locations, underwater tunnels, and environmental storytelling all depend on the intentional level design. So this creates obviously a huge technical challenge when you want to create everything handcrafted, because when your world contains over 100,000 actors and potentially 500,000 by launch, every system needs a scale. We have things like the editor performance, the loading, organization, runtime performance. They're all things that have to be taken in consideration. And probably one of my favorite story about the Unreal Fest talk involved the resource spawning system. Originally, the team wanted to have resources like titanium and quartz spawn procedurally each time you played, and at first this sounded like a cool feature to add, different resource locations every playthrough, things like, rule-based placement, and it's completely procedural. So they built an incredibly complicated custom system. It worked by flood filling the entire world using raycasts, analyzed every playable surface, generated potential spawn points, and stored huge amounts of spatial data. Now this system, it worked, but it was painfully slow. Large areas of the map took hours to process, and every terrain change required rebuilding everything. Artists couldn't preview the results inside of the editor, and worst of all, the players barely even noticed the future. If titanium spawned 3 feet away from where it did in the last playthrough, nobody really cared. And eventually they built a second version using voxelization, reducing the processing time dramatically, but even then it became difficult to maintain as the development of the game continued. Eventually, they simply abandoned the entire system together, and their conclusion was honestly pretty refreshing to hear. Sometimes it's just better to delete months of work than to continue maintaining a system that doesn't actually improve the player experience. And I think that's a lesson that every developer eventually learns, myself included, as I feel like I've ran into the same issue when I've built an advanced system or a feature that doesn't really matter or doesn't really contribute to the grand scope of the game. Now, one phrase that kept popping up through the entire presentation was work with the engine, not against it. Originally, they kept building custom tools because Unreal Engine didn't have exactly what they needed. But as Unreal Engine 5 evolved, features like PCG matured, world partition improved, editor tooling became much better, and suddenly their custom systems became liabilities instead of advantages, because instead of maintaining thousands of lines of custom code, they basically realized that Epic was already solving some of these same problems with larger engineering teams. So their advice was pretty simple. If Unreal has a system that solves 90% of your problem, just start from there. You can extend it if necessary, but don't immediately build your own custom replacement. And if you're trying to learn Unreal Engine from scratch, I've put together a complete collection of Unreal Engine courses. Instead of just learning individual features, we build complete games from start to finish. You'll learn blueprint programming, user interface, AI, animation, multiplayer, optimization, and so much more through hands-on projects that are designed to prepare you for real game development. Every lesson is personally recorded and narrated by me, so if you want to start building games from complete scratch, check out my Unreal Engine 5 courses, link in the description below. Now let's get back to Subnautica 2. One area where plugins completely changed development was environment blending. If you ever built large environments, you probably noticed ugly seams where rocks intersect terrain. Apparently this became a huge issue for Subnautica 2 because of the colorful underwater environments. The solution was, instead of creating custom meshes or manually hiding the seams, games, they use the plugin called Mesh Blend. This plugin applies a post-process effect that blends meshes together automatically, and according to the developers, it required almost no changes to their current workflow and dramatically improved the visual quality while also remaining inexpensive to run. They also experimented with prefab workflows using the Prefabricator plugin, although they are now considering moving back towards Unreal Engine's native level instance workflow. Another interesting takeaway was how inexpensive experimentation became, because when it comes to plugins, if the plugin doesn't work for your project, you just simply remove it. It's a lot cheaper than maintaining some sort of custom engine system for years. One thing they were incredibly positive throughout the entire talk was about world partition. They said that they genuinely couldn't imagine making Subnautica 2 without world partition and one file per actor. Those systems allow them to organize enormous worlds while keeping the editor performance manageable. Instead of loading the entire world at once, they could process only sections that they needed. They also leaned heavily on commandlets, data layers, automated testing, and Unreal Insights to keep the project healthy through early access. It's also just another reminder that some of Unreal Engine's production tools don't get enough attention compared to some of the rendering features. But for a larger game, those systems become absolutely crucial. Another really interesting optimization is how they handled gameplay. Subnautica allows players to scan almost everything in the environment. This means things like rocks, plants, corals, even environmental objects need gameplay data attached. So the obvious solution would be to use blueprints, but obviously having 100,000 blueprint actors would be a disaster. So instead, most objects remain simple static meshes, and gameplay information is attached using asset user data, allowing meshes themselves to carry metadata like scan information, spawning rules, gameplay tags, and creature interactions, but it keeps the world lightweight while still maintaining almost everything interactive. And I actually implemented a system like this in my multiplayer survival game where we use instance static meshes for things like the trees, the rocks, the plants, but when the player wants to harvest one of those objects, you just transform it or convert it into a blueprint actor at runtime to save on performance. That way your entire level isn't spawned with 100,000 blueprint actors. Now, the animation side of the project was equally as interesting, because obviously in your game every creature has its own skeleton, and in Subnautica 2 many were physically simulating. Some had complex tails, others used procedural movement, and that can be very expensive for performance. So the team aggressively scaled creature complexity based on distance. Nearby creatures used full-on animation, but the farther away the player got, the animation reduced updates using Unreal's animation budget allocator. Further away, they became moving static meshes, and eventually they became completely static. Also, they used Niagara for spawning large schools of tiny fish instead of skeletal meshes, and one optimization that I really liked was moving away from constantly polling animation data every frame, and instead they switched toward an event-driven animation system where movement components push updates only when something actually changes, which resulted in things like less ticking, less wasted work, and better overall multi-threading. This is exactly the kind of optimization that open world games really need. And for me personally, the biggest takeaway from the presentation wasn't a specific Unreal Engine 5 feature, it was the overall mindset. Every major lesson came back to the same idea. Don't over-engineer solutions, but rather try and trust the engine, use Epic's tools whenever possible, and automate repetitive work. Don't be afraid to throw away months of development if it ultimately leads to a better project and therefore a better game. And that's something that a lot of studios don't admit publicly. So it was honestly refreshing to see Unknown Worlds openly discuss their successes and their mistakes. And if Subnautica 2 is already handling over 100,000 actors while still maintaining decent performance, I think it's a pretty good demonstration on how Unreal Engine 5 can be capable if you're working with the engine instead of fighting against it. Now, if you enjoyed this full breakdown of the video, you can watch the full tech talk link in the description below. Also, if you are interested in learning game development for Unreal Engine 5, you can check out my Unreal Engine 5 courses down in the description of this video. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure that you leave a like, subscribe for more future tutorials and Unreal Engine news, and that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.